Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. We're back at our regular day and time, and I am Don Irvine, once again joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, domestic terrorists, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right, so I guess I have to add that in now. Where's my pen?
I mean, really, what is the FBI doing here? Right? That's a blatantly political statement that they're putting forth as, a finding, like something that they've, researched or investigated and determined to be true. And it's nothing but self-serving political nonsense for the Democrats. That's kind of, you laugh about it, but it's pretty dangerous what they're doing. They're actually trying to use law enforcement against political enemies. I mean, that's fascism, in real terms.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have a point there. I mean, the thing is that there's a ton of opinions about what happened on January 6th and all these other types of things like this. But boy, it does seem, no matter overall, that we have a narrative that is being woven here that conservatives are in essence domestic terrorists, and that they keep pounding the drum, beating the drum on this thing about the insurrection and all these kinds of things. And they've done that with the help of the media. We're not doing a great job at fighting back, but we also don't control government, so it also makes it a little more difficult.
Right, but we need to keep making the point that there was no insurrection. That's nonsense. We need to fight the use of that word by itself, because what happened there was entirely American. Okay, citizens went to the Capitol, and the Capitol was the scene of the action. You could say, "Oh, well, it's not like the streets of Portland; it's the Capitol." Well, the Capitol is where the thing was taking place, and it's hardly the first protest ever held at the Capitol. And what they were doing there is asking the representatives of petitioning for redress of grievances, the members of Congress, saying, we think this election result is fraudulent and needs to be investigated before you guys certify the results. Okay, it failed. They did not, they didn't stop with the proceedings. They got through it, certified the election, and Joe Biden's now president. But that's all this was a going to your government saying, hey, this is what we want you to do. And government chose not to, and that, okay, you lost. But that's not overthrowing the government. No one had a gun. No one had a plan to take over. No one was going to displace anyone from power, right? They went to make a point. And, it's an important point because, it's now being used to set up, criminal conspiracy charges against people and keep these people in the DC jail for, 23 hours solitary lockdown for months on end. They haven't even gone to trial yet. You don't even know if they're guilty. And, and the judge said, part of the reason that they're keeping them locked up is because Trump continues to claim that the election was fraudulent. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with the justice system's dealings with defendant X, Y, or Z, right? What Trump says, they can't control. You can't keep them in jail for something Trump says. So, I mean, this gets worse and worse. And the entire system is corrupt. Judges, cops, everybody who's cooperating on keeping these people in jail themselves belong in jail because they are persecuting people for their political viewpoints and nothing more.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't overly crazy about, this whole thing about what they were doing on January 6th in general. They had every right as Americans to go and make their voices heard. I do have a problem with them breaking through the barriers and that type of a thing. And, some of the action that got caused, inside the building itself. That I think is a problem. But these reports about how these people are being held, in these conditions, it's like, what country are we living in? This is like, right? This is the type of thing that you would expect, in the old Soviet Union. You expect
right. This is what fascism looks like.
Right.
This is, your political enemies are disappeared into basement jails, without trial, without any chance to defend themselves, without even being able to look at the charges against them. I mean, that is fascism. That is totalitarianism. That is tyranny.
Yeah, I mean that's just I mean in these other countries, I mean you put these people away and you basically hope that everybody eventually forgets about them, and that as time goes along, that does happen. Is that you kind of forget what is going on there. I mean the Democrats and the media are going to continue to beat the drum on the insurrection narrative, which we've agreed that this we have to fight back against that, but the justice for these individuals that have been thrown in jail. This is being really justice denied. Yet the idea that, I don't care what Trump says. I mean, I don't really listen. I get these emails from a lady on our central committee who keeps sending, out these these things, from Trump. And 99% of the time, I just trash them. I don't even bother. I mean, it's like I'm not interested in general at this point, in what he's saying or doing overall with that. I just, it's just Trump being Trump, and I'm kind of over that, a lot of that. But what he says, should have no bearing whatsoever on the justice system. That is, they are two separate events, two separate kinds of things, and it's really just a shame that the justice system, our justice system, which should be the best in the world, has devolved to this.
Right, has been compromised by these people.
Right. All right. Now, before I want to get to other news, I just kind of wanted to see where we are in this post-COVID world. I just saw an email from Governor Hogan's office that as of July 1st, all restrictions will be lifted. Once again, local jurisdictions can do whatever they want. But I have to admit, by and large, I am feeling that even in the People's Republic of Montgomery County, for the most part, life is very close to normal. I posted the other day, I just happened to notice that there were no more of those signs on every other treadmill and elliptical machine in there, and that the signs that had been posted on the wall about keeping social distance and things like that were gone. And I thought all of the little stickers on the floor had been removed, but I did find a couple today. But that just may be because they didn't get to them. And the old cycling studio, which they had basically pushed all the bikes aside, and I think they put some upstairs and had social distancing cycling kind of going on here and there, and had left it open for people to use as an extra workout room. All the bicycles are back. So I'm kind of wondering whether or not the cycling studio and and those lessons or whatever they do, the classes will actually resume. But that makes me feel a lot better. Going to restaurants and, except for the workers, most of the people coming in don't wear a mask now. I mean, there's still some reluctance by people, but in the Costco situation was, what I have. I had 5 people the other day, which was an all-time high instead of just me. So, it's getting better. How is it going in Virginia, as from your vantage point?
You're seeing, it's the same thing, a return to normalcy on a lot of things. A lot of, I live in Reston. A lot of Reston is office parks. And they are not. They're a little behind. You're just starting to see people like getting the order from the boss. I'm starting to see it on Twitter and Facebook and so forth. People saying, "Hey, I'm going back to work for the first time in, however many months or days or years or whatever. I'm actually going into the office." So you can start seeing people. My wife has gone back to going to the office, every day and working from there and not, having the expectation of home, performance of duties or whatever. So, you see some of that. Still a lot of people here wearing masks. Basketball, it's kind of confusing because they, the gyms the school systems, we're starting to get to play in schools again, which is, for a long time we were playing in these warehouses and private gyms and stuff that people had. And so they're starting to open up school gyms again. But of course, school gyms, you have to wear masks. Everybody, the players while playing are supposed to be wearing masks. So, and I told a referee the other day, I look out there and the other team, like 3 of them aren't wearing masks and we're all wearing masks. And I'm like, the rule says, of this tournament that we're supposed to wear masks and, we have to wear them and these guys are not wearing them. And the ref turned around, looked at me and ran down to the other end. Nothing.
Yeah, tattletale.
They avoid me anyways.
No unfair advantage for anybody, right? Everybody should play under the same rules.
I mean, it's like the kids complain. They're like, we can't breathe and they can. It does make a difference.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't know if you saw the thing. I guess it was this morning somewhere down in Georgia. The parents took all the masks from the classroom of elementary kids and sent them off to be analyzed. And they got the analysis back, and we're better off without the mask. The stuff on those masks is disgusting, and you would be better off just taking your chances with the fresh air.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Bob has come in early here. In addition to the domestic judicial abuses involved, the treatment of the January 6th protesters since their arrest makes the United States look bad on the international stage, which autocratic leaders such as Russian President Vladimir Putin are all too eager to use to their advantage. A comment or two from Putin on this today would not surprise me.
Yeah, he's already said some stuff about it, called out our human rights abuses, and that's what they are. He's right.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing too, is that, I mean, if we're going to go after China and these other countries for human rights abuses, we better look in our own back. Normally this is not a problem for us, but what's happened here with these people, it's like, okay, kind of scratching my head. It's like, I don't know. I mean, how much different are we than they are right now? We're kind of getting to that level, and that's not where we want to be, and we will be hypocrites in this regard. Well, let's talk about this whole, since Bob mentioned, we'll just go into this whole summit thing anyway, and then we'll go from there. But I did see a report this morning. There was like a big scrum with the photographers or the journalists or something over there as well, fighting for position and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. And who gets the benefit of this, Putin or Biden? I say Putin. This is going to be more beneficial for Putin than it's going to be for Biden.
Almost everything I've read about this makes that point, that this, Putin looks like a big shot, and Biden looks like, he's getting led around and mumbles, and Putin gets to look like, he's sitting 1-to-1 and telling the leader of the free world how it's going to be, which I think is a lot of what's happening. That's frankly kind of scary, having Biden one-on-one with Putin, because he doesn't really know what he's doing. Yeah, the other thing about this, the whole tone of the coverage of the G7, the whole time that Biden's been on this trip, has been, hey, we're back in the club. We have rejoined the club. Okay. The club does not work for us. The club works for people who go to Davos and people in Europe, right? The club is organized to check us, right? So why would we want to tout our re-entry into the club when the club's only purpose is to limit our potential? Yeah,
I mean, all these things, where the, like CNN or MSNBC, they're throwing out on their screens, it's like, world opinion of the U.S. is skyrocketed, under Biden and things like this. But, Biden really hasn't done anything. First, he hasn't really done anything. But I guess in a sense, if you think you can control a guy like Biden, your opinion goes up, because you're thinking, yeah, look, I can get, whatever I want from Biden in the U.S., where Trump was not likely to give in to these things. He was pretty tough on these world leaders, and he didn't seem to care what they were. We have talked numerous times about how diplomacy changed under Trump, probably really for the better. Biden is taking us back to that old style again, which I don't really see has any benefit for us.
No, it doesn't. It's like being liked by Emmanuel Macron is not doesn't help a single American taxpayer, right? It doesn't. And he's being taken advantage of. They like him because they can run him,
Yeah, I mean, I think I was at the gym when I saw this, when I saw these world leaders get on those two little podium type of things like this. And I thought, I was there and like, what the heck is this? Is this going to be like an Olympic medal ceremony or something like that? Somebody else posted, I saw somebody posted on Facebook. It's like, name this band.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah, it was kind of strange how they did it.
Yeah,
the little platforms and everything.
Yeah, I couldn't quite figure out what it was. I mean, I understand the whole social distancing thing, but it just seems strange to me to have these people up there like this. And I don't know. I mean, are we going to wind up getting action figures of all these people later on being produced or something? But I mean, the G7. I don't know. I mean, what did the U.S. get out of that? I mean, Biden's performance was nothing to write home about.
No, and we're not, we signaled that we're not going to hold people to their NATO obligations anymore too, right? And we didn't get any closer on fixing the trade situation over there. I mean, basically nothing happened. They met, and there was not a huge explosion, so it will be deemed by the press to be a success.
Yeah, and there didn't seem to be a whole lot of criticism or coverage of Biden stumbling, with Libya and Syria. I mean, it wasn't just once; he did it multiple times.
Yeah, he kept discussing, in this press availability. He kept saying, Libya when he meant Syria over and over and over, and people were like. And then there was the one where he was with all the presidents at a meeting, and they had just introduced the president of South Africa. And he's like, wait a minute, you haven't introduced the president of South Africa. And Boris is like, just a second ago, we did, So, I mean, and the other world leaders, I mean, you can look at a certain amount of stuff and say, okay, that was a mistake. People make mistakes. But I mean, we're getting looked at, and people are saying our leader is senile and incapable. And don't think that won't have implications down the line.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing has just been, I mean, these are, we're now seeing, I mean, we've, as we talked about COVID, we're seeing, the first visits, international visits, and we're going to see, Biden and Harris going places. We'll see other people coming to the U.S. to meet at the White House. And so we'll have a lot more that'll be looking a lot more like it did pre-pandemic in terms of diplomacy in that sense of back and forth thing. But I am concerned about, Biden and, his acuity and everything. It was one of the things that was interesting to me was that, Perry Bacon, writing for the Post the other day, he wrote this very effusive column about Kamala Harris. Now, he didn't mention anything negative about Kamala, but I thought it was really kind of interesting that he's basically promoting Kamala, as a future president already. Here we are. I mean, we're less than 6 months into Biden's term, and I'm thinking like, so is Perry Bacon sitting here thinking like he's watching everything that's been happening in the first 6 months or so, and saying like, we better start ramping up the Kamala train here because
looking at Plan B and seeing what's up.
Very early.
Yeah, that's right. And the things she's been given to do have been disastrous too, right? She was a total flop at the border with the Guatemala president called her out. She was greeted with signs that said Trump won, go home, and all this stuff. The tasks she's been given by Biden, which were good, high profile tasks where she could have made a lot of difference without a lot of work. She has not been successful at all. And there's talk, and none of it's verified. So I don't know how much credence you can give it because we know that the stories the Post and New York Times, so forth, wrote about the Bush administration based on anonymous sources were almost all completely wrong. But there's rumor that her and the Biden people are not getting along. So, because they think that she's an embarrassment, which she has been on some occasions.
All right. Bob has come back with another comment. And time again over the course of the weekend, elbow bumps at the group photo ops and handshakes between Mumbles and Macron at the bilateral. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the U.S. winds up getting out of this. The media gave positive coverage. Oh, Bob's coming with another comment. Ultimately, I will judge the Biden administration the same way as the Trump administration on substance over style, concrete outcomes over diplomatic niceties.
Yeah.
And it does seem that there's just a lot of it's all kind of fluff or whatever. We want to present this position that, we've got these great relationships with all these world leaders. Everything is going to be fine and dandy with the U.S. You're not going to have these world leaders that are being upset and complaining about Trump and how they're being treated and all this stuff. But as Bob says, I mean, it's really going to be the outcome, right? In the end, I mean, proof. What have you done? What are you doing? What are the positive things that you are going to be doing along this way? Spencer just tweeted or just posted on Facebook. He says, telling that Jill Biden tweeted out a photo of her G7 preparation, right? And we talk about that, Yeah, so here we go, Spencer again too. Who's in charge? Who knows? I mean, yeah. I think these are all good comments here. Thanks guys, because it's very, very true. Is that I don't know. I really don't know who's in charge, but it's certainly not Joe Biden. I don't think it's
he seems really, and he says things that are weird to say. Like, for instance, he says, I'll get in trouble if I do such and such. How do you get in trouble? You're the leader of the free world, right? You want to speak to the press, you go speak to the press. They're always happy to talk to the president, right? They'll get up at 3 a.m. for that. So, so you get this feeling that he's not in charge, that he's told where to go and what to say at all times, that he is just a figurehead. And people elsewhere cannot help but notice that, and they're going to take advantage of us over it.
Yeah, I mean, there was going to be a contrast between Trump and anybody else who came into office, because Trump was so unique in so many ways, and there was, you knew that, we always knew that Trump was in charge. Whether or not you agreed with everything he said, we knew that this was Trump. Trump was always going to be Trump, no matter what. And it was going to be up to the staff to either do damage control or to, kind of smooth things over, elucidate whatever he was doing there. We don't get a lot of information directly from Biden. It's been a very controlled presidency so far. We don't have really press conferences, from the president himself. Jen Psaki, we've talked about this, admitted that, they basically have him, kind of, they want to keep him controlled because they're worried about what he might say, because he stumbles so much, right? I mean, it's
right.
They're concerned about what he'll do. But on the other hand, even when we're seeing Biden stumble, the media hasn't really reacted very negatively. All that. I mean, they're still treating him, in a lot of ways with kid gloves. It's only right.
Right. They can't really change, right? Because they're so invested in it. But he has the problem with the credibility of these people, right? And he also has a problem. Like, he had the one press conference, so she was the longest of any president in modern times holding his first press conference. And we talked about it at the time. We said, you'll know what the White House thinks of this by how soon we have another one, right? And we haven't had another one, and there's not one scheduled, and there won't be one scheduled, right? And so I don't know, you were saying earlier that we had to, it's time to start having, thinking about the fact that there'll be a lot of heads of state coming to visit the White House, and there'll be a lot more opportunities for Joe to participate in these various consortia, world leaders and so forth. I don't know that they won't try to dodge some of that and keep it to a minimum, keep it on, the friendliest possible terms and so forth, because, I think that they are, and I would like to hear, what they say about this, but I think they notice the same thing we're talking about, right? I think Jen Psaki, agrees with most of what has been said about Biden so far on this program today. And, that he's a step slow, and that people realize it, and that it's a danger, and that it's a problem. But I mean, she's not going to say that publicly, right? But I think that they act as if they agree with everything we're saying.
Yeah, and I think there are those in the media that are also understand that, and they realize that. They were hoping that all of this stuff that had been said about Biden, during the campaign and all this, were not true. They were, they wanted to ignore it. They didn't want to believe it. Right. They're seeing it front and center now as the president of the United States, and I think they're really conflicted. It's like, as journalists, they have an obligation to report if they're honest, good journalists, but they're obviously holding back here at this point.
That part's gone, bro.
Yeah, no, they can't.
Ain't doing that anymore.
I mean, they're completely compromised on this point, on this, because if they reported honestly about President Biden, it would be devastating to the administration at this point in time. But he's still coasting along.
Right. The front of the Washington Post today has 4 stories on it trying to raise scandals against Trump. 4 stories delving into Trump stuff, nothing about, what's going on with Biden and the manifold and manifest failures of this administration,
That's true. I mean, that's one of the other things, is that I keep thinking in the back of my mind, that I hear a lot about, all these things that they're going after Trump for. They're trying to dig up and dredge all this stuff. Okay, he's not the president anymore. A lot of stuff is just nonsense. But it's great to deflect, attention away. It's like, because Trump's a good he's a good bogeyman, on this. I mean, if people will focus on this, the media can do this, and then they look like they're doing their job because they're doing investigative reports on Donald Trump and his administration and all these people and everything that happened there. And then they don't have to report on the inadequacies of the Biden administration and the struggles going on there, hoping that people will basically buy their Trump nonsense and forget about the fact that they're just covering for Biden.
Right. And so you can even see it like, here in Virginia, the governor campaign, basically the Democrat candidate's platform is, my opponent is too close to Donald Trump. That's all he's got. That's all he says. Every tweet, every Facebook message, everything he says is some kind of trying to link his opponent to Trump. And I'm not sure that that's as marketable as they think it is. There's already been a poll out saying that the basic race is basically even. And I don't think anybody thought, Terry McAuliffe with his, 80,000 Twitter followers and, millions of dollars in backing from Clinton syndicate people would have any trouble with this guy who's never run for public office before. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. I think that he's going to have a lot of explaining to do. And he doesn't really seem to have anything, in his arsenal besides attacking Trump, which that's the same as, the national Democrats. It's like they can't get off attacking Trump. And so, at some point we'll get around and talking about what it is they're trying to do to and for the country. But, right now they want to keep the conversation on Trump.
I'm glad you brought that up because I did see, I think it was a Facebook post that popped into my screen from McAuliffe, and he's just like, he didn't name Youngkin, by name, but he said, he called him an extremist.
Yeah.
And, and the thing is, so look, this can work if you're running during the Trump years of 2016 to 2020. I mean, you can get some people riled up about it, and I think in some places in the country, that kind of talk, the anti-Trump, just blast Trump and talk about extremism. I think that can work with some voters. But Trump is out of office. He's not saying a ton of stuff. He's commenting here and there, but
and a lot of Trump's policy choices that have been changed by Biden have blown up in Biden's face. Energy, the Middle East, the economy, these massive spending bills and so forth, that they thought was going to supercharge the economy, not really happening. Is what it's causing is inflation because, we are, I think we're printing, I think half the money in circulation now or a third of the money, I think, in circulation now has been printed since Biden became president. And they're just churning out money. And it's, you can see it's like the largest month over month inflation rise in U.S. history in May. So, I mean, it's coming downhill. If you've been in a grocery store lately, you can see, that, it's not just gas prices, food prices are off the map too. So,
yeah, I mean, I haven't looked back to see what inflation. I didn't go back to compare it to 2019 because most of the figures coming out are comparing to 2020, and 2020 was just that
depressed some,
yeah. So you wind up with these kind of kooky these numbers that don't necessarily match up. But there's no doubt that like you said, if you walk into a grocery store, you're definitely seeing spikes. Yeah. How long those spikes will take place, I don't know. I mean, I just saw a story about, we know, there was all these stories about how lumber had just gone through the roof. I mean, there were home builders that wouldn't basically quote you a price of a home until you signed until you're ready to sign a contract and everything like this, and until they were pretty sure what the price of lumber was that they were going to have to acquire for that. Now, lumber is
right, and that's this time of year. That's a particularly problematic thing because this is when home building really steps up.
Right. They were saying that now lumber prices are have tumbled, but they're still very high compared to where they were before. So they're still high. They're just not at record highs right now. But that does affect so many parts of our economy. But for McAuliffe and the other Democrats running, if you're just going to go, trying to attach, Youngkin and anybody else to Donald Trump, you're going to try to say that they're extremists. To me, that's not a winning strategy today. That's something you could use in 2018 potentially, or 2019, maybe even 2020. But now, a lot of the voters, their focus isn't on Donald Trump anymore. Their lives are now getting back to normal. They're trying to get back to work. They're trying to find jobs and improve their situation and do all these kinds of things, and then deal with the inflation that we've had for the last few months and figure out how they're going to do that. And we've got the rent, moratorium expiring here, in 2 weeks. And that's going to be a very interesting thing, how that will affect things, because we've got that. And then we've got the loan, student loan thing coming up. I think that comes up in September. I think that was extended to September. So we've got a few things on the horizon that will still affect, a lot of individuals out there. I don't think the number one issue now is Donald Trump. He doesn't have Twitter. He doesn't have Facebook. And I just think that trying to tie Republicans to Donald Trump, I don't think that works in Virginia. That's a great thing to see that, polls are showing that they're even. Yeah, if I'm Terry McAuliffe, I'd be worried right now that Youngkin and company are doing that well at this stage of the game. And I assume that there'll be some debates. I'll be very interested to see how those debates turn out, because maybe McAuliffe thought he had a free ride in there, and that's not going to be the case for him.
Right. We did not, Republicans in Virginia did not mess up the nomination this time, right? We didn't pick a clown and a guy with a Confederate flag. And, we got somebody or a Bushy, who wouldn't really run as a Republican. I mean, we have a real Republican running as a real Republican.
Yeah. And these are just politics. I was having dinner with it wasn't really my dinner. You saw that Facebook post where I'd fed all these young guys yesterday, and because of that, I only ate like half the burrito I had, and I took that home and gave it to my wife and stuff like that. Then I got a call from a friend of mine who said, "Hey, do you want to join us over at the Lito's Pizza over near you? Because we're just coming back from someone's house." And I thought, yeah, I really didn't get all my full dinner. I'll go have some conversation with them. And I was talking about Republican politics in Maryland and just, where we're going. They just came off their state convention. They're going to have a gubernatorial election, race coming up in 2022. But there's all this there's a lot of infighting going on about people whining and complaining about things already about this stuff. And it's like, it's June 2021. There'll be an election in November of 2022. You got to get your act together and get unified here as things go on, because time is going to, next thing you know, you're going to be in crunch time for the election, and everybody better be set up as they're running for various offices to make sure they beat back the Democrats. I have no idea how the Republicans will do in Maryland for governor in 2022. The candidate that I like, she seems to be a very good and credible person. Can she do it statewide? I have no idea at this stage. I want to see her in a debate. I want to see who the Democrats put up, and find out there. But I don't think Trump is going to loom large in Maryland, and you've got to be very broad based. I mean, Larry Hogan showed that, you can't be a hard right-wing conservative to win in Maryland, but because the legislature is never going to go along with you. But you can be an effective governor in a lot of other ways by charting your own path. We have a lot of Republicans are upset in Maryland because, of his comments towards Trump. But I understand that distancing of, between Hogan and Trump, was necessary for his political future, political life.
It's one way to win. I don't know if it's the only way to win.
Well, at least in Maryland,
you can choose that path, but that's like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski,
right, and
formula,
and Trump won't be a factor in Maryland, so it'll be something to see what happens in 2022, because the Democrats will not be able to use Trump in any way, shape, or form anyway against these candidates, because he's just not an issue, at this point in time. I mean, Trump, exerts a lot of influence on Republicans throughout the country and for 2022 and 2024 elections. But, but in elections on like this, Virginia and Maryland, the statewide elections for governor, I don't see him having to play a big factor in those you tie him to. I think that's a losing strategy. Anyway, that's my whatever, my soapbox. I do want to talk about this infrastructure bill because I did see a story that Schumer is going to go and pull the reconciliation lever here to try to push these things through. Is that going to work?
Well, he is running this idea by the Senate Budget Committee, which means he's trying to get the votes but doesn't have them, it says to me, right? If he can say the whole Budget Committee said, yeah, this is our approach, we're united behind it, there's still hope. They got a couple of people they got to talk into this because they don't really have 50 votes to do this under reconciliation. And a lot of it they can't. So the plan, what he's trying to do, so he's trying to pass the parts of the infrastructure bill that pretty much everybody down there agrees on under regular order, and then pass the Democrat wish list under reconciliation, and combine it with the full-on federal budget proposal. So, I mean, I don't think that he can get this under reconciliation. I think that, that will be the hill where, Manchin has to die on this time, and possibly Sinema too. People that look at it and say, hey, that's not what reconciliation, we're still abusing the process and so forth. And then you'll get another round of calls for killing the filibuster. But I believe that the polling they're doing on killing the filibuster is telling them to shut up, because you can notice that, like, you've heard a lot less about that the last 2 weeks. The diehards still see it as a way out, but the people who run the Democrat Party in Washington know better. They know that it will get them in trouble.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really got to be a dead issue for them. I mean, that you can try to push that, but no one, you're not going to get the support you need to make that happen.
And you can be just months from losing control of one or both houses of Congress. So, if you give the Senate permission to operate without a filibuster, none of the Biden agenda might make it through. So
right, and I do think that that plays a little bit of a part with that, because they came in just guns blazing back in January, but here we are 5 months or so later, and now you start looking at the tea leaves a little bit and you're like, geez, I'm not really sure that we will maintain control of all of this come 2022. So if we do this, will it blow up on our face like the judges did under Harry Reid? They pushed through all those Obama things, but that really bit him in the butt, when it came time to it later on. So there's
also they can, spend it on roads and bridges, which doesn't really excite the hardcore leftist crowd anyway, right?
Right. I mean, it's all about, the hardcore leftists. I mean, unless you give them everything green all the way through from top to bottom, it's just not going to work. And we've talked about this numerous times too, just about the ridiculousness of all this green push by the progressive left for all these things without really thinking through how this all really works. There's no for all the stuff that the left talks about, follow the science and we need the science. They completely ignore the science, on stuff like this. It's just it's ridiculous. And no one, conservatives are about the only ones that really call them on the carpet for this. The media certainly doesn't. They're rolling over and playing dead on this issue too.
Yeah, that's right.
So
they don't want to, they don't want to mess him up. They don't want to mess up their access.
Yeah, I mean, Biden has been throwing out all these things. I mean, he's been rolling back all these environmental things from Trump, and I did put on this thing. We had that Louisiana federal judge. I mean, he's lifted that that whole ban on new oil and gas leases. Now, I don't know. I mean, I expect that the administration will appeal that immediately and fight that. But I mean, it's going to be one of those things that may have to be fought a little bit along the way. And people, you realize it's like, what Trump had done here is just trying to make sure that we stay energy independent on this basis. I mean, Biden, I mean, this is, shutting these things off and all of this kind of stuff. It kind of goes back to even to, what they're doing, what they did in Petaluma, California, where they locally they said, you can't build any more gas stations. I don't know how many more people were going to build gas stations in this day and age, but you can't build any more gas stations, in Petaluma. Well, I mean, that just seems to be really short-sighted anyway.
Yeah, we won't need gas. We'll just stop needing it. So
right. I mean, that seems to be kind of the. He's like, you can't build any more. We don't want any more, and we won't need any more in the future, because our future is green energy, and that means no fossil fuels whatsoever. So we just need a bunch of charging stations. And how are we going to?
Which don't use fossil fuel, of course.
Yeah,
electricity is generated by wishes and nice things.
Right. It's all that flowery.
Yeah.
We're living on a cloud kind of a thing, and all that. But good for this Louisiana judge. What was his name? Was it Dowdy or something like that? Or so good for him on doing it. I do want to ask you though about this whole thing with Jon Stewart, the comedian Jon Stewart, not a conservative,
right?
On Stephen Colbert, and he just kind of went off on the Wuhan lab leak theory, and left-wing Twitter just went nuts.
Yeah, and Colbert was like, "Are you sure about all this?" And he's like, "Yeah, come on, use your head." It's like, so now to the point where what I'm wondering is, why do they care how this comes out? Why is the left so invested in, this was an accident and the wet market had nothing to do with the lab? Why not just say, yeah, we don't really know, and it could have come from a lab, and it could have escaped from a lab, and boy, there's a growing amount of evidence. What is it? What makes that so hard a pill for them to swallow? Why can't they just say, yeah, I guess we were wrong? It's not just about admitting you're wrong. It's about, are we going to continue to act as if the thing we know to be wrong is true? Right, because we're doing that on other stuff like the mask, right? We continue to act as if mask ever helped when we now know that they never helped. We continue to act as if there's nothing wrong with these vaccines, even though we're getting increasing evidence there is. I think that someone called yesterday for the CDC to pause vaccinating kids because of there's a thing, especially boys, of heart problems, resulting from it. That happens with a lot of vaccines. So, I'm not sure, where are we on this? At what point do we just go, we start treating the truth as the truth again? Because this is, it's pretty clear that it was not a random thing, and that the Chinese at least knew what they were dealing with. We've talked about the cell phones. They lost 21 million cell phone users in China in 2 months. And China's a big country, and there's a lot of people that change their cell service and so forth, but 21 million people in 2 months is astounding, right? So they paid the price, and they know what they're dealing with, and they knew what we were dealing with and didn't tell us. And I don't think that anybody who takes an honest look at the facts can dispute that anymore. So, I ask, why are you fighting this? It's not going to, it's not a left, it's not like, if you admit that it came from a lab, we can now blame the left for things, right? We blame, I guess there's some blame to be assessed to Fauci and others who funded the research. And apparently, Fauci went around Obama. Obama said no more gain of function research in 2014, and Fauci went around him and kept funding it. So, maybe we ask some questions of Fauci, but, this is not a like, if you admit this, then we can attack the left on a broader range of stuff. There's nothing really there to attack. So I don't understand why they are so interested in protecting this, at this point, completely discredited theory.
Yeah, did I read this right or see this right? That one of the things out of the G7 was that they agreed that they wanted WHO to really conduct an investigation. We already saw what happened when they tried to do that the first time. It's like, basically it's like if China tells them there's nothing there, they're basically saying, okay, there's nothing there.
Yeah, Fox. What happened to those hens? Well, I wasn't there. I don't know, man. Oh, okay. Well, Fox says he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, the credibility of who? I mean, where is that today? I mean, Fauci's credibility. Where's Fauci's credibility? I mean, a lot of this, comes down to they don't want to go after China. China says, don't you dare go there or else, and they basically back off.
Yeah, and they said, Trump wasn't backing off from him. He was saying this all along.
Yeah,
is that bad? How is that bad? How is that worse than where we are now?
I don't know. All right. I do want to mention, I had said earlier that Trump hasn't spent a whole lot of time in the news, but he is making some news about, I guess he's going to go to the border with Governor Abbott. Is that what I hear?
That's correct. He's going to go down, I guess, next month sometime. They're going to go visit it and tour the facilities and show him what the damage is being done on our side of the border. Trump's been down there before. He won't be surprised by much of what he sees. But it's good political theater, right? The media will have to cover it, and there will be why is Trump here still worried about this? But the vice president who was placed in charge of it, can't be bothered. The thing I guess she made news with the interview with Lester Holt, where she was talking to him about going to the border, and he said, "But when are you going to the border?" And she's like, we've been to the border. She kept saying, we've been to the border. Like, he's like, you haven't been to the border, and then it was, well, I haven't been to Europe either. Right. Well, it's like, that wasn't the question, ma'am. And we don't have this thing going on at the border of Europe. Right. We have this thing going on at the Mexican border. That's the thing you're in charge of. So, I mean, you could tell, when you have Lester Holt calling you out and you're a Democrat politician, that's not good. He's not trying to call you out. He's trying to make you look good. That's his job. So, it's I don't know what they do there. I mean, they need to, they've already started to revert to some of Trump's policies, right? They're going to finish the most vulnerable sections of the wall. They are going to have the asylum people wait on the other side of the border. I think part of that was a court order that ordered them to do that, and they know they can't beat. And they are limiting the asylum, and they're trying to work on it with the at the source country. So they're basically saying they undid everything Trump did, and now they're like, well, actually these weren't bad ideas, right? Because it caused a catastrophe.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I mean, it's basically Trump, I guess, is trolling, Kamala on this. It's like, hey, look, I'm here. Where have you been?
Yeah.
And Harris,
it's good theater, and and it keeps the issue front and center. And the administration, they can't really criticize it and so forth. And what I have seen on the internet about it is like, he's undermining the president. It's like, excuse me, the last president ordered the IC to spy on him and to make up stories and distribute them to the news media so then they could say they were covered and this guy was corrupt according to press reports, and open an investigation and even cripple his administration for 2 years. So we will not hear any complaints about interfering with the administration, because the administration got it interfered with in 2017.
Yeah, and then, and Kamala had said, don't come, which wasn't actually that different. I mean, they've said this before, but boy, the left goes absolutely nuts. I think AOC went right after her for this. It's like, but this is, this has been kind of their message and part of their mixed messaging, right? I mean, all this criticism of Trump and how he handled the border thing, and then they've come out and they say, don't come. Because they can't handle it. They don't know what to do. It's a crisis for them. Please don't come, because it only worsens the crisis that we don't have any idea how to deal with.
Right, which we created because it was under control when we took over. But we just couldn't stand it because it was Trump who got it under control. It's all personal. None of it is based on data.
Yeah, we dismantled all these Trump policies, and then it only made things worse.
Right.
So
had it right.
Please don't come, because we've really botched this and everything. This and that's obviously AOC definitely just hinges. She just waits for certain words to be uttered by Biden people, and then goes after them. There's definitely that schism, that whole thing that goes on there. They just kind of wait to pounce on there. That creates a problem for Biden administration, that they can't control the AOC, the squad wing. They have trouble with that group, on a regular basis. And so, speaking of AOC, what about, she stepped up her calls for Justice Breyer to resign. I mean, it's not going to happen, in my opinion, right?
I don't think it'll happen, and so what, right? That's one of the three libs. So if someone's going to retire, that's who I want to retire, is one of those libs, and it won't be Sotomayor or Kagan. So
right.
Well, she's most likely.
Breyer's been on there a long time, and he's older.
Yeah, he's most likely one. But then all you get is another liberal,
right?
Right? You don't get to turn a seat.
Right. No, but I mean, it's the same argument that I had tried to make in the past under Trump, was just that it would be a bad thing to get Clarence Thomas to retire while Trump was in office and the Republicans controlled the Senate, because you could bring in a younger conservative justice to do that would sit on the court for another 25 or 30 years. I mean, Clarence Thomas is not going to be going for another 20 years. So, right. Do it when you control. And so I think that's her point. But, they tried to do that with Ginsburg, and, they wanted, they were trying to get Ginsburg, to leave, and she wouldn't leave either. And, so they're going to stay there. I mean, there's just, I think in general, these Supreme Court justices, they're there, they see, they're there for the lifetime. And unless health or something like that really precludes them from continuing with their duties, they're going to stay with, or unless they just come to, like they say, I've had enough, I'm just leaving now.
Yeah, I was going to say though, nothing in Breyer's timetable of when to retire is going to be affected by anything AOC says.
Yeah,
he can't care, he doesn't care.
Yeah. Bob has come back talking when we were talking about COVID here. Is a chance of any transparency for China on origins of COVID-19? Zero.
Right. So why are you asking the WHO, which is controlled by China?
Right. Yeah. Who's doing who's bidding here? We know. Yeah. We already know all this.
Give me a break.
Cow. Yeah, already. So we're well into 2 minutes. Go 2 minutes. I lost track.
Well into 2 minutes. Okay, let me look on here to see what we did not cover. To Jon Stewart to trigger. So we had this guy in Fairfax. So what he said in his commencement speech?
What she said?
She said, "Can you summarize?"
Yeah, I mean, it was just this. Let me bring this. Do I have this thing up here? I think I have this thing actually up here. It's better to use her words. So her name is Abrar Omeish. So she's a Fairfax County School Board member. She is a Muslim, and she was giving a commencement speech to the Justice High School, which I'm assuming Justice is either a new school, or was it one of the renamed schools?
It was renamed. It used to be Stewart.
Okay, so that was Stewart. Okay, yeah. So anyway, so as she goes on here, the reporting here on this is that she was relatively uncontroversial. She began, and then she switched between Arabic, English, and Spanish. And then she says, "Today we checked off a box in your academic journey. As a human being, you have developed and you have grown." And then it moved on. "You understand that social justice is only political for those that can afford to ignore it. You can understand that neutral is another word for complicit, and you have made a choice to take a stand. That's why." And then she warned the graduates, about all this. And so that's exactly what I'm here to tell you: to remain steadfast, keep your eyes on the prize. Our world is overwhelmed with need. We struggle with human greed, racism, extreme versions of individualism and capitalism, white supremacy, growing wealth gaps, disease, climate crisis, extreme poverty amidst luxury and waste right next door, and goes on. And this goes on.
Yeah, we want more of this. We want 5 more high schools in Fairfax County to have this kind of commencement speech, because they are getting outside the lines. They are getting to the point where you cannot possibly look at them. And this is something that you can see Youngkin picking up on when he's asked about what's going on, that he wants to fix in the state. One of the things he says is that the schools are being ruined by wokeness and political correctness, right? And so you're writing his attack ads when you go off on this kind of nonsense, because I mean, even like, the liberal jurisdictions, Fairfax, Loudoun, so forth, are like, these guys are nuts. And so, I think that actually this is a ray of hope for us that, they keep putting their cards out there and telling us who they are.
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting there. I mean, commencement speeches should just be really talking about, the hopeful future and all the great job you can, a lot of platitudes and stuff like that.
You're like a referee. If you are not noticed or remembered, you did your job. If you're what we're talking about, you screwed up.
Yeah, I mean, and so she's made national news because of this, calling out, basically, criticizing capitalism, trying to turn all these kids into social justice warriors, and and heavily criticizing those that have managed to accumulate wealth and how they waste it, and all the bad things of capitalism, and people who've actually, learned to make money, and they were entrepreneurial. Just terrible message to send these graduates. But
right.
But as you said,
the thing about it is they know it. Like, kids know how to solve problems. Like, it gets screwed up when you get our age and you start weighing in stuff. But kids know, this guy's got a problem, we're going to lift him up. This guy's taking advantage, we're going to keep him down. So, kids, their heart is true. They understand what they're seeing, and they know they probably got run a line of BS.
Yeah. I used to pay a lot closer attention to, and we haven't spent as much time on commencement speeches, whether or not it's in high school or college, but I think by and large, because of the furor over some of them, a lot of them have gotten to be less political. There haven't been as many criticisms lately as there were a couple of years, 2-3 years ago about them. I think they realized that was just a mistake to go down that path.
Right. It's not your day. It's the graduate's day.
Right. The focus isn't on you. It's on these kids, right? It's on the students. It's not you. As you said, you're like the referee. You're supposed to be basically unnoticed. Give them some good, encouraging words and congratulate them and send them on their way. Don't make it about yourself and all your causes and your wokeness.
Right.
And everything. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us again today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please stay safe and stay well, which is obviously becoming easier. We haven't, miraculously, Brian, we haven't seen any real big spikes in the U.S., despite that where a lot of us aren't wearing masks anymore and gathering. Gee,
that's right.
Imagine that.
Probably because of it, but
imagine that. So please, as always, remember we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let him tell you otherwise. Please, as always, God bless America. Have a great day. And this is Father's Day, the coming weekend, right? So everyone, Ryan, have a happy Father's Day. And to anyone else out there, a father, please. And, remember your fathers. Remember, both of ours have passed on. And so we'll always remember our fathers as well. So thank you once again for joining and commenting. And we will see you again next week.